coffee every day with tons of sugar and milk in it, you know.
Wow, yeah.
And people will always remember me as always hunting for a cup of coffee, no matter where I was, you know. We'd be driving down the road and we'd have to stop at a 7-Eleven so I could get a cup of coffee or someplace, you know.
Sure, sure.
So it was a very strong addiction, and I've known, I mean, you know, it's funny, there's always two sides of me. The one side focused on health because I had so many health problems, and so I read all these health books, and I take these vegetable juices and have the most extensive vitamins and minerals and go to all these doctors, but one single thing that I needed to do for my health to bring it up to a better level, I was unable to do. And the coffee had such a grip on me. And in fact, I remember some years ago I was watching a TV program about addicts, you know, different kind of drug addicts.
Right.
And they showed a picture of a heroin addict in a third world country, and he'd been using heroin for quite some time, years I guess, and he was just all skin and bones, you know, literally very emaciated, and he was still shooting himself up. And the narrator said, and this person is probably going to die very shortly. He is unable to control his compulsion. And that's kind of the way I was with coffee and sugar. So it would have destroyed my health, that I couldn't.
So you've given up coffee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've given it up again,
right.
But the difference is a huge shift. The difference is this time I wanted to give it up. Okay, I felt there was something in me, kind of like a body knowledge or something, that kicked in, that said the coffee and the sugar is not good for your body, that they recognized that even though I might have enjoyed the taste, it's not good for me.
Right.
And so when that higher knowledge kicked in, it was like the hold. It's like the addiction hold.
And why do you think the higher knowledge didn't kick in before?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. I can only, it has to be the bangle. What else could it be? I mean, I've tried willpower before. It must be the bangle. I
think what you're saying is interesting, and you know, your situation's not unique at all with other people I've spoken to. There's just different modalities and different forms. And I've spoke to one person who wore the bangle, and he was a very heavy drinker. And I mean, you know, bottle of scotch on the weekend wasn't an unusual procedure, let's put it that way, for one evening. And he put on the bangle, and without any pre-thought, any pre-planning, any concept that he was going to stop drinking alcohol, it just happened. He said, Nick, I put on the bangle, I just don't feel like drinking alcohol, I can't believe it. And, and his wife couldn't believe it either. She was absolutely thrilled and insists he doesn't take it off. And other people have been saying the same things. And you mentioned a term, this higher knowledge that's inherent inside your mind, that perhaps previously hadn't been given enough respect and territory, now seems to have more say in your decision-making process, which is why it was easier for you to just quit coffee. And that would be the same story I've heard fairly repetitively from other people with other drugs. And it's quite amazing. And when you think about it, and I've said this before in other videos, but I like repeating it because it's such an important perspective. When your resonance changes, when the frequency of your electrical body changes, you naturally gravitate towards, if it's an improved resonance, improved frequencies, you're naturally going to gravitate towards more high-minded decisions and conclusions, more spiritual perspectives, more healthy rules of health conduct, as it were. And by natural resonance of the one to the other, I mean, you know, low thoughts, low vibrations, negative activities have low vibratory resonance. High spiritual, idealistic, altruistic, magnanimous thoughts have high resonance. And so I think what you're saying is you're wearing the bangle, you notice your higher mind kicking in, making the decision more clearly without any passive-aggressive counter thoughts, and it's easier to integrate the decision. And you just gave up coffee, and it was easy. And you gave up sugar, and it was easy. I eat a lot of sugar. I never had that reaction. with sugar. But I didn't have such an extreme impending need to lessen the sugar in my diet. So perhaps that's why, you know. Anyway, I'll get back to what you're saying, but I just wanted to interact and say that again, as I've said before. It's about, you've changed your frequency. The decision-making process has changed as well, and it's probably pretty exciting. You know?
Well, it is, because this is something I could never do before in my whole life, and yet it was so necessary for my health. But you talked about, you know, making decisions. It wasn't even making a decision. It was my body was just rejecting the coffee and the sugar. And the grip that it had on me lessened, you know, which was amazing, because up until then, you know, coffee and sugar were the center of my life. It was the first thing in the morning, you know, that I would look forward to, and throughout the whole day. In fact, a life without coffee and sugar didn't seem worth living. It was, you know, and in the past, when doctors have told me I needed to give it up, there was this horrible realization, like, what is life going to be like without that? I can't imagine what joy you would get, you know, and somehow, like I said, the body I didn't decide it, the body just said, you know, this, you don't need this, you don't want it, it loses that grip, that total grip, and in fact, the few times that I did slip in the last 3 months, where I did slip and go back and have coffee and ice cream, the thrill was gone. You know, I enjoyed it, but it didn't have the magic, it didn't taste as good. It just, it was something I could easily let go. And now that has been replaced now by other joy. I have a more internal joy now that I don't need to get.
Well, let's talk
from
about
food.
that. Let's talk about that internal joy. You mentioned earlier, before we shot the video, about, you know, less anxiety, less, you know. Do you want to embellish on? Yeah,
I mean, you know, in these economic times, I had a lot of fear, as a lot of people do. And it didn't help that I was raised by a very fearful mother, so I was always afraid of everything. I was always expecting the worst in every situation. And then, of course, with the present economic circumstances, that only can add fuel to the fire. I mean, at times I was really, really pretty scared. And since I've had the bingo, my attitude has shifted now. I'm more positive and optimistic. You know, I can't always see how the next step is going to go. And life is uncertain, but somehow another opening. If one door closes, another will open. So I'm not as fearful. You know, that which is major. That's huge. That's huge. That you know, because fear and worry take your energy up, and then you're distracted. You can't find solutions. So if you have a big problem, fear and worry is the worst thing that you can do. And if you can get rid of that and be calm and peaceful, that really is the way that you're going to solve the problem.
And you mentioned calmness earlier, and of course you meditate.
Yes.
And is there any story related to that?
Just that it's a whole lot easier to meditate now. You know, when you have health problems,